Chicago is burning. President Trump is stepping in to save lives, and Democrats, they're crying racism while families are begging for help. Tonight, we're breaking down Trump's National Guard plan for Chicago, the Democrat meltdown, and the undeniable proof that this crackdown works. Stick around. This is going to open your eyes. This is Andy with TrendingPolitics.com. Hit like, subscribe, and let's get into this one.
The Pentagon is reportedly planning a military deployment to Chicago as President Trump eyes the Windy City's crime crisis.
We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent, and we'll straighten that one out probably next. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
And what did Chicago's leader do when Trump announced and offered help? They didn't thank him. They didn't admit failure. They didn't say they have a problem. They cried about a so-called military occupation. Watch this embarrassment.
Unsurprisingly, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are pushing back against Trump.
The city of Chicago does not need a military occupation. We will, take up legal action if necessary, whether it's my Department of Law or working with the governor. What this president is doing, he's declared a war on poor people.
My hometown of Chicago should take a look at what's going on in D.C. Crime has dropped significantly since Trump's crackdown, and Democrats say it's racism.
There is nothing they love more than spinning racist narratives, talking about crime.
Donald Trump, Stephen Miller have some of the most racist policies ever.
This militarization going to a Black woman mayor's city, to me, it goes again to the level of racism and hate that is.
While they play politics, real Chicago families are crying out for help. People who've lost loved ones and people who lived the violence every single day. They're not asking for excuses. They're begging for action.
This is a really interesting topic. This is my hometown, a town that I care about a great deal, and I lost my brother to violent crime in Chicago, so I care about this topic very much. I go to you, Griff. The people of Chicago have been asking for help, demanding it, begging for it for a very long time. I would even argue decades. Shouldn't J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson say, hey, let's work with you on this so we can reduce violent crime in Chicago?
100%, Gianno, and you are a perfect example. You know, there have been more than 250 murders in 2025 in the city of Chicago. And when Mayor Johnson or Governor Pritzker gets up there and makes these statements that this is unnecessary, unwanted, uncalled for, why don't you ask the loved ones of those 254
exactly right.
or 6 that lost their lives? You know firsthand, tragically, what that feels like.
And here's the real hypocrisy. Democrats are screaming racism, but most of Chicago's victims are Black. The policies from the left make Black neighborhoods more dangerous. Trump's policies make them safer. Watch.
And in Washington, I've been reporting on that story there and talking to people there that feel that they're not necessarily Trump voters, but they're welcoming this. One woman, Asia Tamimi, had her husband stabbed to death trying to intervene a few years ago in a robbery. Her eldest son is a paraplegic, shot 9 times. And, you know, it's just this eye-opening sort of thing that the president's done, that people in crime-ridden cities like Washington or Chicago that learn to accept and live with it, and they never took time, Gianno, to say, wait, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
We could change it.
100%. And if you don't have the money to leave the city, then you're really stuck with the crime. And Lisa, my very dear friend, I'm so glad to be here with you. You know, the Democrats have been arguing that the actions of the president is racist. But what has become clear to me over years of seeing a policy, Black lives oftentimes don't matter to Democrats. It's the Black votes, and they continue to create policies that endanger the lives of these African Americans. And most of the victims in Chicago are African Americans. So if they're not doing something about it, what's the point here?
Well, I'll say real quick, Gianno is thinking about running for Senate in Illinois, so if you think you should let him know. But I think he'd be a very good candidate.
But yeah, what is racist is defunding the police so more Black people are murdered in the inner city. What President Trump is trying to do is to save them, is to save people in these inner cities. That's not racist. That's life-saving. That's being
And while Democrats keep screaming, Trump's providing results in Washington, D.C. Just look at the murder. Murder's down. Violent crime is slashed. 10 days without a single killing. This is what happens when leadership takes over.
I will say in Washington, D.C., I do think the scenario is a little bit different than in Chicago, because if you look at Washington, D.C., the Constitution grants Congress the authority over this city. The president has the authority over the Home Rule Act to lead the Metropolitan Police, the D.C. police there. And he also has the distinct job of being in control of the D.C. National Guard. Now, when you get into some of these other cities, I don't know, it's a little bit more legally dubious, right? It gets to be a little bit, and I know that there's been calls for the president to to invoke the Insurrection Act, like Senator Tom Cotton asked him to do that during the George Floyd riots. But you could argue there was like a rebellion and an insurrection happening at that time because cities were being burnt down, police officers were being beat up. Like in that case, that makes sense. So now, I don't know. I mean, I know that he's sending the National Guard in to help some of these ICE agents, which would make sense because they're just, more in a facilitating role. So I think it depends on how he does this. What's the legal justification for it? So I don't know. What he's doing in D.C., I fully support, and it's working. He's enforcing the law. There's been 0 murders in over a week. Elsewhere, I just would like to hear the reasoning.
No, 100%. And Nicole, he can bring in ATF, he can bring in DEA, he can bring in numerous FBI, numerous agencies to help with what's going on in the city of Chicago. As an example, there are 2,000 detectives short of the murder workload there. And the clearance rate is terrible in the city of Chicago because the police are handcuffed. What's your take on this?
Well, so first of all, of course, Johnson and Pritzker are not going to open their arms and welcome anything that Trump is going to do, even if it's for the good of the people, because this is all politics. And they're always going to put up resistance because they hate Trump more than they love Americans. And that's the reality. And so while Chicago continues to say, well, our crime rates are actually down, and they do point to some rates being down, the reality is since 2019...
But the clearance rate is still down.
Since 2019, Chicago's down 2,100 police officers. You have fewer police officers, you're going to have significantly fewer arrests. And I'll be honest, the Justice Department is investigating the D.C. police right now for cooking the books about their rates. I would be more interested to look at Chicago rates as well, because all you have to do is talk to people of Chicago, and you know that crime is still a massive issue, and they need help.
100%.
So to be clear, the media can cry, politicians can whine, but the results are speaking for themselves. Trump is saving lives in D.C., whether or not people like that. Imagine what could happen if Chicago leaders stopped blocking him.
As we mentioned, violent crime is down more than 40% in D.C., and the National Guard isn't done yet. At least 6 red states are sending a total of 1,200 additional troops to D.C. to help with the crackdown. Griff Jenkins is at our touchscreen to break this all down for us. Griff?
Yeah, Jenna, let's get a little closer look. We've heard so much about what's happening in Washington, but we can show you, we put a map together for you. Now, the 2,200 plus National Guard troops are stationed in about a dozen places right now in Washington. Just to give you an idea on this, the Capitol is right here.
So that's the truth. President Trump's saving lives, cleaning up cities, and proving results. And meanwhile, Democrats in Chicago would rather call it racist than admit their own failure. Chicago deserves better than this, and Trump's giving it to them whether the leaders want it or not. This is Andy with TrendingPolitics.com. Stay informed, stay vigilant. I'll see you next time.